Hi, I'm Andy. This is Project Car Haven. Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to mention that in my spare time, that's funny, I created a website, projectcarhaven.com, where it has all the YouTube videos available, Instagram posts, and t-shirts like this. Anything you buy from Project Car Haven will go towards supporting my pursuit of fixing broken cars. It's a pretty standard t-shirt here with the Project Car Haven logo. I have made a limited edition one with a silhouette of the Ford Falcon. I'll put an image somewhere here for you to see. So I'll leave a link in the description below to the website where you can go ahead and, I don't know, check stuff out, maybe support the channel if you feel like it. Anyway, on to fixing this thing. Hi, I'm Andy. This is Project Car Haven. Today, we're working on the Falcon again. At the end of the last episode, we were ready to get this inspected to pass a roadworthy. And good news, it did pass and it's now registered and able to drive on the road legally. Bad news. You see, when it's sitting stationary, everything's fine. Then you're allowed to go drive it, it starts moving, problems show up. Now, I found an oil leak and I panicked thinking it was the rear main. I climbed underneath and had a look and found it's probably just the valve cover gasket has slipped in during installation and it's left a gap. So that means I've got to pull the whole top of it off so I can reseat that gasket, stop the oil leaking. It's not a huge deal, but it's a decent amount of work, which I shouldn't really have to do, but I messed up, my bad. I had a few people commenting along the way on the other videos saying, surprised you haven't had to do the center bearing on the tail shaft or the diff bushes. It's a very common Falcon problem. Guess what? Yeah, they're all no good, so that's more work to do. Doing the diff bushes means dropping the whole rear subframe. It sounds very daunting, but I don't think it's as scary as many people make it out to be online. The center bearing for the tail shaft, well, this being a Mark II FG, means that the center bearing, or the uni joint rather, isn't held in by circlips, it's press fit. It's not serviceable, so the only solution is to replace the whole tail shaft. And that's not cheap. In fact, it cost nearly as much as what the car cost me to get. But it is what it is. When we replace those things, it should be good for another 200,000 Ks. Fingers crossed. I don't think so, but for as long as I'm going to own it anyway. And another thing that happened was it started getting a little bit warm. I managed to get it home before it overheated. But the fan was coming on and off intermittently, and with the aircon on, it should be running all the time. So the fuse should have been good, and I took it out, and it is fine, but the underside, there, is a little bit melted. So what that tells me is the fan's getting old, starting to draw more current. It's running all the time. It's not enough to blow the fuse, but it is generating heat at the base of the fuse, therefore melting the plastic, causing the pin to move around inside the holder. It's making intermittent contact, the fan's cutting out, engine starts running hotter. The only way to fix that is get a new fuse in there, which will make good contact, and replace the fan with a new one that doesn't draw as much current so it can just do its job as intended. So new fuse, melty fuse, get rid of this, install this one. Make sure it's well seated. Get this out of the way. Unplug the fan, undo the 2 bolts and get it out. Nice new fan. Plug that in, give it a start and a test to see if it functions. Yep, fan started and it's moving air, that's good. That took a while longer to stop spinning than the original fan too, so feelings about the other fan drawing more current than it should have are kind of right. Time will tell. Now, next thing, try and tackle that oil leak, which means I've got to pull everything apart up here. Yay. Stick this back on before I forget. Right, it's going to need these undone. Hose off, oil cap off. Ah, yeah. So the valve cover's over there. I've cleaned it up with some degreaser. I'm going to lay some silicone RTV in the groove to hold the seal in place so it doesn't slip out when I install it back on the engine. I don't want a heap of RTV in here. I want just enough so it holds the seal in place. Now wait for that to cure.
Tomorrow.
Well, I went ahead and threw the valve cover back on. Based on what I could see, that seal definitely did slip inwards and let oil just pour out everywhere. Be able to get a better view once I get the jack under here and lift it up. So yeah, there's a decent amount of oil around here, but I noticed further up is where the oil had come from. So that needs a good clean off now that I've solved the oil leak. Before getting everything wet under there, trying to clean all that oil off, grab a torch and try and show you guys the center bearing on the tail shaft so you can see why it needs to be replaced. It's a bit hard to see, but this is sitting right down here. This should be sitting higher. There's all cracks and splits in this, and that's why it makes noise when decelerating and accelerating. This is moving around and thumping against the floor. I'll do my best to try and capture some of the sound that the tail shaft makes when it's moving around when it shouldn't be. I'm just going to move the microphone a bit closer to the tunnel to hopefully pick up more of the sound. So the sound isn't as pronounced as it is in some Falcons, but it is there. So it's not fully worn, but it's not good either. So best practice, change all those things before something catastrophic happens. Now I do have the diff bushes and the tail shaft. Hopefully they're the right parts and actually fit. The issue is I'm also currently working on a twin turbo Mitsubishi Legnum VR4 out the back, and that's on flat concrete, which is what I'm going to need to be able to take out the whole rear cradle of this thing. So I'm currently held up with that because I'm waiting for some brake discs to arrive so I can then get that on the ground and move it, and then I can move this in and fit those parts. So I don't know if we're going to get that done in this episode. What I can still do is clean off all that spilled oil and also do something about the headlights, because I actually have parts to do that. And because I'll be working on the headlights without the engine running, I got this here. It's the JS2000 Jump pack from TOPDON. I have a diagnostic scanner from them and it works really well. So I got myself one of these. It's kind of handy to have in the car, you know, it's better than jumper leads. If you do need to help someone out with a jump start, it reduces the risk of, you know, having it surge back to your own car and popping the ECU. I personally don't know of anyone that's happened to, but I have heard it is possible. So it comes in this impact resistant case. Like most jump starter packs, it does come with a built-in light. Help you see what you're doing at night. So it has a built-in strobe function. I suppose you could sit it on the roof, attract attention of roadside assistance when they come to save you. It also has USB ports built in, 18 watt output, so you can charge your phone from 0 to 80% in about 35 minutes. Just a matter of plugging the connector pack into the allocated spot. Powers up. Hook it up to your battery. Lights indicate ready to go. Now that definitely did spin the engine up faster than with the battery alone, so it puts out a decent amount of power. It claims to be able to start 8-litre petrol engines and 6-litre diesel engines. I don't know where I'm going to find engines that size to actually prove that claim, but I guess I have no reason to doubt it until shown otherwise. Simply take the clamps off, unplug it, and in about 10 seconds it'll just shut itself off all by itself. Lights out, pack it away. Well, jump starters are really useful tools. I do keep one in the boot of my daily driver all the time because you never know when you're going to get caught out. If you do want to get yourself one of these JS2000s from TOPDON, check the description below. Should be a link there to give you a discount so you don't have to pay full retail price.
Now I'll get this in the air, get some degreaser on the block to get rid of all that spilled oil from the leaking valve cover seal. Now I'm just going to use the exceptional water pressure we have here to rinse that off. Alright, headlight globes. A lot of people in the comments have been saying upgrade to LEDs. The thing with LEDs is they have chips on either side and they need to be at about the 3 and 9 o'clock positions to work properly. The housings on the FG Falcon end up canting the globe over so they're not lined up. The only way to get around that is to find a pair of bulbs that are adjustable, and I haven't found any yet. I did buy a pair from the auto parts store. They appear to be non-adjustable, so they're not going to work in this situation here. Parker bulbs I've already replaced with these little T10 LED bulbs. It was pretty hard to see anything with the reflections, but they are in there and working fine. For the high beams, I'm going to use these Osram H7 Cool Blue Intense bulbs. I don't know, claims up to about 5000 K color temp, which is closer to white. I don't use high beams that often. I am going to stick with halogens because I need them to be spot on reliable, and they're not going to burn out in a hurry because of the lack of use. In order to give myself enough room to work, I'm probably going to have to take out the air box and the battery so I can actually fit my hand in there to get the old bulbs out and the new ones in. That gives us a lot more room to access the bulbs. The high beam's still a bit tight, but we'll manage, I think. Yes. So there we go, H7. Taking great care not to touch the glass at all. Alright, that's that one fitted. Now for the HID main beams, I use these because 360 degrees of light gets emitted rather than the LEDs that need to be at 3 and 9 o'clock, which don't work in these housings as I pointed out. Solution from this seller, because these ones don't fit, this base here is too thick, was to get a grinder and just grind it down thinner, but not on the glass side because we wouldn't want to wreck the bulb, would we? That's ridiculous. No, but I did find some HID bulbs with a metal base which matches the standard bulbs, so these will fit in the housing with those brackets, so I'll use these instead.
1 hour later.
So I have the headlight bulb installed on the passenger side. I have an app on my phone that can measure lux, light output. It's not calibrated or super accurate, but it should show enough of a difference between the standard halogen and the HID bulb to give you an idea of level of brightness. The HID does start quite dim, but then brightens up once the salts dissolve inside the plasma arc. There we can see good light cutoff. It's not blinding up high. I'll aim for a bright spot somewhere in the light beam. So the halogen looks like it's about 1269 lux. I get about 2478 in the HID. And I did get a reading during the daylight a bit earlier, and that was at about 2500. So the HID is pretty close to standard daylight. Normal halogen, bit dimmer, as you'd expect. You can't see as much at night time with normal headlights. The HIDs, however, should give enough light to make it appear like daytime, make it safer. And also not aimed up at people's eyeballs, oncoming traffic, and send them blind. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode because I'm stuck. I'm running out of time to get the video out on this. I'm still waiting on the brake rotors for the lignum so I can get it out from the backyard to free up the flat space so I can bring this in, drop the whole rear subframe, get the diff bushes fixed and the tail shaft replaced. So unfortunately, I didn't get as much done in this one as I'd like to. You'll have to wait for the next one where hopefully I get all that stuff fixed, get the windows tinted, and I think that will be it. This will be done. Then I can retire my current daily driver, which is breaking down and quite frankly starting to be horrible, and start enjoying this. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, I have t-shirts like this available on my new website, projectcarhaven.com. Link in the description below. If you can help support the channel, I'd appreciate it a lot. In the meantime, I guess all that's left to say is thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.